and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and not Kyle. Kyle could not make it today, but we have a great guest. You know him as the Hook Cam. You can also subscribe to his YouTube channel, The Hook Cam on YouTube. Cam, not a great week for your Patriots. We got rid of one Patriots fan, bringing in another. How are you holding up?
I'm doing okay, man. It's been such a weird season for New England that it's just a roller coaster. You know, it's like one week you're feeling good and you've beaten the Ravens in an absolute downpour, and the next week you're rolling into Houston like this should be a not a 4-point game, and then next thing you know, you're in an absolute dogfight with Deshaun Watson. So besides that, I'm doing good though, man.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. First, as always, we start off with the Monday Night Football game, and Sunday Night Football game, and what a game it was. This was awesome. I feel like if the Raiders won, we'd have about like 300 more people watching us live because of how big the Raiders Nation is here on Jackson Cougar Sports. What were your first reactions to this awesome game?
Dude, the Raiders are a good football team. That's really what I felt watching the entirety of it, because I didn't know. This morning, I was the first time that I heard that the Raiders took a victory lap at Arrowhead last time when they beat them. I didn't know that. And so I was like, oh man, Kansas City's I was like, Kansas City's going to roll. Coming off of a bye, you got a lot of dudes who are healthy now. Kansas City's going to roll. And the Raiders are a legit football team. They run the football very well. They love their gap scheme, and they build their play action off of that. Not to toot my own horn and not to toot, what we've been saying the whole time, but they do a great job of building their play action around their running game, and using guys like Nelson Aguilar, using guys like Henry Ruggs, and they're a good football team, man. They're contenders. For them to go in and to play Kansas City tight twice in a season, that's not a team Kansas City wants to play in the playoffs, especially if they got a little bit of momentum.
Yeah, and what was crazy about it was I felt like the first time these two teams matched up, the Raiders won, but it kind of felt like the Chiefs were the better team. The Chiefs did a lot. There was a couple breaks that went the Raiders' way. Mahomes threw a pick. He doesn't do that too often. He's thrown now 2, both against the Raiders. But but this game, it kind of felt like the opposite. I mean, Las Vegas had their opportunities. There was multiple Nelson Aguilar drops in this one. Both took points off the board. You also had a situation where there was a 4th down and 1 at the goal line. They were ready to go for it. Then there's a 15-yard penalty, which I have a conspiracy theory about. I am 98% convinced that someone on the coaching staff didn't want to go for it and just yelled something at the refs to get a penalty to guarantee the field goal.
That would be quite the conspiracy, and him and Gruden are probably going to have a long sit-down chat later this evening if that's the case.
Yeah.
Honestly, just kind of going back to where the Raiders are as a team, they look good. And that's really the thing, is that I feel like, and putting myself in that position of a Raiders fan, it's like for the last few years, you've had these glimpses of oh man, we looked really good in that game, or if 3 or 4 game stretch. And then you would kind of hit reality. But the reality of this Raiders football team is that they're contenders right now, and not necessarily for a Super Bowl, but they're a team that I don't know if you would really want to play going into the postseason. Their style is one that can make a run. Team that runs the football really well. They're really gritty. They have these long drives. Opening the game, they had a pretty solid drive. They're not a team that you want to play, and it was really encouraging to watch. Secondary, I mean, you got to be stoked that you've picked off Pat Mahomes twice this year. That's got to be something that you hang your hat on. Although I think the pick tonight was on the receiver. That play just looked weird, but still, you got corners who are closing on the football and making good plays.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes blamed his receiver, so I trust Mahomes in that moment. You're right. The Raiders are legit, and it's crazy to think that this team is 6-4, because they do not feel like a 6-4 team, and they've had really to run through the gauntlet through these first 10 games. Their schedule gets a lot easier, so it'll be interesting to see what they can do. But yeah, the crazy thing about this game was it was high scoring, but also there was, if you take out the possessions at the end of halves, there was 15 possessions in this game. The average, I did the math, the average point per possession was 4.2 points per possession, which currently I believe the Packers going into this week led the league with 3.2 points per possession. This was defenses didn't really play great. I mean, we probably should talk about Jonathan Abram at the end there, giving up his assignment as a deep safety to try to chase Mahomes, leaving Kelsey wide open. That wasn't great. And I mean, for the Chiefs, defense has been really underrated this season. It's been great, but the Raiders were able to really make quick work of it.
Yeah. The Chiefs defense, so one of my friends is a diehard Chiefs fan. So I went and watched the game a little bit with him, and he's like, dude, what's happening? And I'm like, the Raiders are playing really good football. The Chiefs are coming out in their 4-man front. I thought they were going to go more with their 5-man under because that's the run stopping front for them. I thought they were going to come out in their 5-man under, try and force the Raiders into 2nd and 3rd and longs, and then bring pressure on 2nd and 3rd and long. They didn't do that, and they kind of let the Raiders bring the game to them, and they were all for that. They ran their gap scheme. They ran G a couple of times, which is just beautiful. They do such a good job of and I'm getting mixed up with my thoughts because anytime we talk running game, I get super excited. But they do a really good job of basically mixing up their run packages, right? And so like they'll be out of the gun and they'll run pin and pull, and it'll be Josh Jacobs, on the edge, and you've crack down with your tackle, and they pull their guard or they pull their center as well. They've just built a really solid offensive line and a really solid running game. And then, like we said before, their play action game to boot, it really put a ton of heat and a ton of pressure on that Kansas City secondary, and I don't necessarily think that they played super well. I think that Waller had a really, really good game. Nelson Aguilar, he had a couple of drops, but I'm trying to think. Would you say he had I thought that he played well, to be honest with you.
I thought he played well too. I mean, but you just can't have those drops. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And Nelson Aguilar would be one of the best. He'd be a great receiver if he had hands. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. I've never seen a receiver like him that gets open so consistently and catches so infrequently. He
does have a really good way of getting open. He breaks his routes off really well. But yeah, a lot to be happy about. It sucks for me as a Patriots fan. I'm like, man, a lot to be happy about as a Raiders fan, just because of where that team's headed. I'm sure as Raiders fans, they're like, okay, we're sick of we're going to be really good down the stretch. Like, we're trying to win these games right now. But I'm going to stick to it. A lot to be happy about. They have some absolute dogs on the Raiders. Like Josh Jacobs is a gritty SOB, man. I love watching that kid run the football. And he's their workhorse. They just build around, guys like that. And line wise, Colton Miller's looking a lot. He was playing today. He looked a lot better. I mean, Rodney Hudson's one of the best centers in the league. He's a ton of fun to watch, and they're just building around those guys.
Yeah, and one more thing we should probably mention is that the Raiders didn't practice this week on defense. Their entire defense was out with COVID. So the fact they were able to still do this, we have some comments. One says, damn, Kyle looking good with a beard. So there you go.
Appreciate you.
Also, this is an interesting question. So Eric Hansen says, are the Raiders the only team who can beat Kansas City? I'm going to change it a little bit because, any team can beat any team on any given Sunday. But are the Raiders the team that matched up the best against Kansas City?
Are you asking this from me, or are
you? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that the Steelers match up really, really well with Kansas City, just because matchup wise, it's going to be really hard for Kansas City to compete with Chase Claypool, Juju, and a couple of the other receivers that the Steelers have. Eric Ebron's also going to be a problem, as well as James Conner. The Steelers are looking really good running the football. So I think the Steelers on paper look really good, but I mean, if you're the Chiefs, you don't want to see the Raiders. You've now played them. That would be 3 times, and you've split the 2 series. I wouldn't want to see them in the playoffs for sure. But on paper, if we're just talking right now, I would say the Steelers look a little bit better, just because I think they have a little bit more firepower. But if you're talking about like that 1 game case scenario in division games, anything can happen. Anything can happen when 2 teams in division play each other. So like I said, if it's the playoffs and it's, the divisional, or I guess wild card, that first round, Kansas City doesn't want to play Las Vegas.
Yeah. I still say Oakland all the time too.
I'm gonna mess that up.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at the teams that Mahomes has struggled against historically have been those cover 3 drop teams that can get pressure with 4. And I think the Steelers definitely, to have the pass rushers to pull that kind of thing off. Yeah. The last thing I'll say about this game is it would be such a travesty if Las Vegas doesn't make the playoffs this year with all the good teams. I mean, if Cleveland makes the playoffs and the Raiders don't, I mean, that's just the Cleveland's fine, but they're just boring. Like, the Raiders are legit. And right now they're currently tied for a playoff spot with the Ravens and the Dolphins, but they have an easy schedule coming up.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, though, just because really quick, you mentioned that how, the one kind of thing Mahomes does struggle with is when teams, mix up their coverage a lot. You look at how, New England has done decently against Patrick Mahomes. I don't think any team has done really well against 15
Right.
just because he's that talented. But when you look at what Belichick does and why they're successful against Pat, it's because they do such a good job of, okay, we got one high safety, we got another safety in the box, and then pre-snap, we're going to roll and we're going to drop into 2. Or we got 2 high at the snap, we're going to roll and we're going to drop into 3. If you can mix stuff up like that and you can combine that with, bringing heat with 4 guys, then you're going to have a chance to somewhat contain Patrick Mahomes. It's tough to do, but and especially in a playoff game, if you can get him rattled and he's not in Arrowhead, I don't know if that'll happen for Vegas, but that is where you see the minor dents in his armor. If you have to change stuff up on the fly, because if you continuously run 3 or 2 or quarters or read 2, he's going to end up tearing that stuff apart later in the game. And the Raiders have done a really good job, or a decent job. Once again, it's tough to say anybody does a good job against 15, but the Raiders have done a decent job of getting to him a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, we say exactly. That's just the Mahomes factor. Is we say they did a good job and he put up 35. I mean, that's what he does. Also, we have a super chat. Truett Stoneberger. Thanks for the great content, both of y'all. Appreciate that.
Appreciate it
very
buddy.
much so. And we'll move on now. Let's talk about it. I know this is the Patriots are dead. We thought that maybe there was a way they were going to climb back. The Patriots are dead. What are your initial thoughts as a Patriots fan about this one?
Extremely frustrated, because you come out of a really gritty win against Baltimore, feeling really good about it going into Houston, and then they drive down the field first drive and score a touchdown, and you're like, all right, 7-0, let's go. Let's actually have not that blowout game, but that solid win that this team really hasn't had this year. And they just continue to not play well. And it's like defensively, Deshaun and Houston, really what they were doing that was messing with New England is that New England was running cover 1 and they were robbing a safety down. Well, all that was happening is that robber wasn't paying attention to the crosser, right? And so they would go 3-by-1 and they'd rob down the safety on the opposite side of the 3 receiver side, or they'd go empty and it'd be 3-by-2. And so that number 3 receiver was crossing the field. And so you got Kyle Duggar, you got Adrian Phillips trying to run with one of their tight ends, and their tight ends are big dudes. They're big athletic guys. And so now you've got this crosser running across the field. He's getting behind that robber safety, and that's an easy throw for Deshaun. All he has to do is really improvise for a couple of seconds, right? He's okay. Maybe we do get pass rush. They were doing a horrible job of containing Deshaun today, and he's going to make that pass every single time. And that's what happened really today defensively for New England. Offensively, you have to get a quick game going. I don't understand this. And I thought a lot about this today, and it's like how with the whole Brady thing and how he had success for so long, it was because of their quick game, and they don't have their quick game with Cam Newton. I don't know if it's that they don't trust him, if it's that he's not seeing it, if it's that he doesn't trust us. I don't know what it is, but he's not getting the ball off. Teams don't respect New England's receivers. They're going to lock up, they're going to play cover 0 or cover 1. They're going to bring pressure. If Cam Newton sees it and can get it off in time, great, but you're not going to do that all game. And that's what happened today on crucial downs, on 3rd and 8, on 3rd and whatever. Really, they're just bringing pressure, and they're daring New England to beat them one-on-one somewhere, and it's not happening. And it was that time and time again from New England today. Just a lack of, I don't want to call it play calling, because I honestly don't know what goes on in that room. Because as a coach, it's tough to go and call plays that you don't trust calling. And that's really the thing, is that if you don't trust it, if you don't trust your quarterback to see it, you're not going to call it. And that's what I really felt like today. It was I don't think that they trust one to get the job done quite yet. I don't know. He's just not seeing it in his quick game. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that's play calling. I don't know if that's receivers, not getting separation. I don't know. But it was more of the same from New England. And they're going to continue to have this problem. Teams are going to continue to pressure them on 3rd down, and they're going to continue to not convert because they don't have a quick game going.
Yeah, good stuff by you. I did not watch this game because I knew you were going to be all over it. But I'm just looking at this. I'm looking at this statistics right here. Their Texans running backs had 19 yards on 13 carries. And despite that, Watson still gets 344 yards on just 37 attempts, nearly 10 yards per attempt. What the hell happened in the secondary? I thought the secondary was supposed to be one of the best in baseball. Football. How did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it was like I said, when you play a quarterback like Deshaun, it's really tough to go and bring heat, because if one guy misses, then he's going to take off, and that's an easy first down. It's an easy 12, 15 yards. So they're trying to run cover one, and they're trying to spy with a safety, really, is what it looked like. It looked like when they were robbing a safety down that they were really, trying to spy Deshaun. What that did is now you leave these guys one-on-one on the outsides, and as great as this New England secondary is, J.C. Jackson didn't have a good day today. Stephon Gilmore got beat on balls, and really I think that they kind of underestimated this Texans receiving core with Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller, and I'm completely blanking on their tight end's name. I know one of them's name is Wells, and the other one's name
Jordan
is
Atkins.
Yeah, Atkins. And Atkins is a big cat. I don't know exactly what his dimensions are, but he's got to be at least 6'4", 6'5", and he looked like he was running all over the field. He's big and athletic, and him matched up with Kyle Duggar or Adrian Phillips is a mismatch. Like, those two guys can't hang with a guy who's that big and that athletic. You have to give them help. But Deshaun Watson was absolutely dicing up the New England secondary today, and it's because they were running cover one and they were sitting in cover one. And they're going to live and die in man coverage. And today they died in man coverage. That's just how that's how they're going to play this year. And as much as it is frustrating to me, because I sit there and I was like, come on, like you have to bring heat. You have to force Deshaun Watson to make a mistake. You have to force him into something. If you just sit there and drop 7 or drop 8, he's going to dice you apart. And that's this new age quarterback who has the ability to take off and run and pick up 12, 15 yards, but can also, if you sit there and you're like, all right, well, now we're going to drop 7 and we're going to force this dude to throw, he's going to be able to pick you apart, especially if you're running man, because those guys are going to create separation. They're too good. Does that make sense? Or am I talking in circles?
No, you're good. Yeah, I think we got it. This is good stuff from you. All right. Any final thoughts on this one, or shall we move on?
Oh God, I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what New England does from here. I really am interested to see if they go and they stick with Cam or what they do, but we'll see, man. We'll see.
Yeah. And I'll say this to the people saying that the Patriots dynasty is dead. I mean, the things they've had to overcome this season are just insane. There's so many opt-outs. They lost so much talent. I believe they have like the second or third most cap space available next year. This dynasty is not over yet. Do not count out the New England Patriots. Yeah,
it's going to be, I think they have 35 million cap space rolling into next year. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't want to make this a Patriots talk. I have a ton of thoughts running through my head, but let's move on.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on. Let's talk about this one. So this was a very interesting game. This was kind of the game we all circled on the calendar going into this week. The Tennessee Titans and the Raiders, both kind of on losing streaks. They needed to get this victory. There was this weird pre-game fight before the game started.
Oh, there was?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really a fight, but it was more of like an argument where the Titans were on the logo, and John Harbaugh came out and some of the other coaches came out and started yelling at them. A.J. Brown after the game said that set the tone. People don't think that kind of thing matters, but it does, which I found very interesting. This was a really competitive game. There was an awesome A.J. Brown play where he took down 4 Ravens defensive backs on his way to a touchdown. We saw some cool Des Bryant plays. Des Bryant is back in the NFL. That's fun. Yeah. And at the end of the day, another loss for Baltimore, and they've now lost twice as many this season that they did last season.
Yeah, I think that with, it's really interesting because Greg Roman, who is the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, was also the offensive coordinator for the Niners with Kaepernick. And what Greg Roman does really, really well is he does a great job of utilizing the quarterback in their running game, right? A lot of read option, a lot of power read. He does a really good job of taking advantage of the edges of a defense. That gets stale over a year, 2 years. So now you have this defense who did a really good job containing Lamar in the AFC divisional game last year. Now you're rolling into the regular season, really kind of putting the chips on the table. All right, let's see if he can make something happen. You had a little bit of a breakout game from J.K. Dobbins, and you saw different stuff from the Ravens this year than you did in the divisional last year. But at the end of the day, I think that, the book to beat Lamar, I don't want to say is out, because Lamar is so athletic, and if you put him in a one-on-one situation, he's going to win. But they did a really good job of forcing the Ravens to throw the football, which is not where Lamar is as good as he is running the football. So they put them in really difficult situations defensively. Not only that, but that Titans defense is so athletic. That front 4 and their linebacking core is some of the most athletic dudes in the NFL. And then when it comes to the Titans running the football, the way they run their wide zone is literally poetic. It brings tears to my eyes every time I see it. They just do such a good job. And, as good as Derrick Henry is, that offensive line is just as good. And they do a great job with their wide zone of getting movement up front, getting to the second level. And you see plays where Derrick Henry's not getting, he's not making contact with a defensive player till 4 or 5 yards down the field. I mean, that's frightening as somebody who's trying to go and make contact with Derrick Henry after he's got a head of steam. Now you're trying to tackle him at an angle. That's not going to be a situation that you're going to win. And you saw, just how the Titans, they work their wide zone and then they work in their play action game. And you have these big physical receivers on the outside like Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. You've got a really athletic tight end in Jonnu Smith. And you put them in situations where you have to load the box as a defense. You have to bring, 7-8 guys into the box if you want a chance to stop Derrick Henry. Now you got one-on-one on the outsides and you got big physical receivers who do a really good job of creating separation. And that's where they're going to end up winning football games. So it was, a really good effort from the Ravens. They're a good football team, but I think that they're going to have to change a little bit if they want to continue to be a force in the AFC.
Well, yeah, and I think part of the problem is I don't know if Baltimore has the receivers to really people want to blame Lamar, and I guess that's fine. But you look at the stats today. Mark Andrews, who's obviously a great tight end, he had 96 yards. The next best receiver was Des Bryant with 28 yards. I mean, they just don't have the consistency in the wide receivers to really throw the ball as much as they want. Lamar's going to get the blame. He's the quarterback, but they've had a lot of injuries on this offensive line. They don't have the receivers they really need, and teams know how to stop the run. So there's only so much you can really do if you're Lamar Jackson. I still think he's going to be fine, but I do think that for this team, their offense it went from historically great last year to mediocre at best this year. And while their defense is still awesome, I think in today's day, good offense beats good defense. And I think we saw that today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's kind of, you summed it up well with what I was trying to say. And you play the blame game when you're in our seats where you're like, all right, well, who's to blame at the end of the day? And it's like, I don't want to blame Lamar. I love, dude. I've always I love Lamar in college. I like him in the league today. I think that he has a really bright future ahead of him. But it's, it's just tough when you're trying to run the same stuff over and over again, and you run the same, the read options, and you're bringing guys across the field. You're trying to widen, defensive ends and stuff you have to mix stuff in. You have to utilize the Mark Andrews. You have to utilize, Hollywood Brown is one of the most electric receivers, young receivers in the league right now. You have to find ways to get that dude open, get him the ball in space. Same thing with Willie Snead. Willie Snead's a stud. He's a really good possession receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. You got to find ways to get those guys the rock, and I don't think Greg Roman's doing that. I would agree with you.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about Greg Roman and sort of the fall from grace he's had over a year. Report says Fact or Fiction, Ravens fire Greg Roman after the season. This guy won Assistant Coach of the Year last year, and now he might not have a job at the end of this year. Yeah.
That's the NFL, dude. It is absolutely crazy, man. It's so, what have you done for me lately in the league? It sucks. It's sad, but once you're in the NFL, you're in there for life. But I agree. I'm seeing some stuff in the chat here that's like Greg Roman, it's kind of on him. I hate to be that guy as a coach. You never want to, point the finger at people, but it's tough to not blame a guy like Greg Roman. It's tough to not blame the OC when you've got weapons and he's not necessarily utilizing them. I do think that we need to give credit to the Titans defense as well, though. It's those guys are absolute dogs up front. They do a really good job of eating up offensive linemen and taking gaps away. And I saw somebody hashtag bring Marshall Yonda back. He is one of the biggest losses for any team in this offseason. That dude was an absolute stud up front. So it's tough to replace a guy like that. He's probably going to end. I don't know if he'd be in the Hall of Fame one day. Probably will be. He's one of the best guards of all time, I would say. That dude's just an absolute freak.
If nothing else, Ravens Ring of Honor and they lost Ronnie Staley too. So you look at Baltimore, and it's like if this was last season, Baltimore fans would be ecstatic. You're 6-4. Yeah. You've lost to good teams, and the rest of their schedule. So their last 5 games, they played Dallas, Cleveland, who they smoked week 1, Jacksonville, the Giants, and the Bengals. That's easy. They played Pittsburgh on Thanksgiving, but if they find a way to beat Pittsburgh, this is a team that could absolutely end up going 6-0 and finishing the season 12-5 4. That probably still won't be enough for the number 1 seed, but they're far. Don't count Baltimore out just yet, even though
Definitely not.
It's a tough loss.
Definitely not. I couldn't agree with you more. And, just on top of that, it's like moving on to next year, this team's only going to get better. I forgot that they lost Ronnie Staley, who's, one of the best tackles in the league. So they're only going to get better from here.
Yeah. Also, we probably should talk about the Titans a second, too. This is a huge win for them. I mean, to have the bad loss on Thursday Night Football, come back, beat one of the better team, last year's team that had the best record in football. I mean, this Titans team is good, and their defense has, they played solid this game, 24 points to Baltimore. You'll take that, especially with how electric their offense can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tennessee played a really good football game today. Like I said, that defense is good, and that is one of the grittiest football teams in the NFL. And talk about a team that lost a lot. They lose Taylor Lewan for the season. That's a major piece of their team, but they still just keep plugging along. And if they can, they're going to be successful running the football. It's just a matter of if you can contain that and if you can force Tannehill into bad throws. And, one thing that I saw kind of going through the highlights and going through the game film is Tannehill looked good on third down, not great. I think there's still some things that he can do better, but he does a really good job of seeing where that pressure's coming from and replacing that with a football and getting a first down. Titans look good, man. They're another team that you really don't want to play, especially if they have that momentum going into the playoffs.
Yeah, they play Indianapolis next week. That's going to be
a
huge game. Potentially the division on the line for that one. All right, we'll move on. Let's talk about Indianapolis. They have this wild win over Green Bay. This game, another crazy game. MVS taketh, MVS giveth away. He has this huge play to help tie it. The fumble in overtime. Green Bay led 14 points at the half. What were your thoughts on this one?
Rodgers at his finest. It was weird because I was kind of bouncing back and forth between that game and Tua in Denver, and I was really wanted to see how he would do out in Mile High, and then I saw the Packers were up, and I was like, oh cool, like they're rolling right now, they look good. And then next thing I know, I'm like, oh, the Colts just ripped off like 3 straight touchdowns. What's happening in Indy? So I hop back over to that, and I mean it's interesting because Phillip Rivers has kind of changed the way he's played over this season. And I saw somebody tweet out, I can't remember who it was, that, Phillip Rivers' play style didn't necessarily match what Indy was trying to do early in the season. And I agreed with that. He was very I don't want to say careless with the football, but that's what it was at the end of the day. He's slinging balls around. He's throwing 3 picks a game. That's not what this team is built to do. They're built to pound the rock, have long drives, convert on third down when you need him to. But besides that, just kind of be a facilitator, be a game manager. And I think he stepped into that role more and more over the last 2 weeks. And you can see it's really just about, hey, when it's 3rd and 8 or when it's 2nd and long, and we have that play they had to Michael Pittman today is a great example, right? I want to say it was off play action. They had this real nice crosser set up where they ran deep with a dig with number 3, and then they ran that drag with number 2, who was Michael Pittman. And that's stuff that you need Phillip Rivers to do, man. Be a game manager, get that ball where we need it to in those crucial situations. But besides that, we're going to pound the football, and we're going to set our defense up with these grinder of games, and that's a good defense. That's a good football team, the Colts. I wasn't a believer in them, but this win over the Packers, I think, said a lot. They're a good football team. At the same time, you're like, dude, the Packers were right there. The Packers were on the doorstep. That was a horrible play from MVS. So
it's tough. It's tough because you don't want to blame it all on one guy, especially when he did have a really good game. He's had a good couple of games for them, but you can't turn the ball over there. And for Green Bay, I mean, that's kind of one of the things about Indianapolis that they've done so well is take away the ball, and you kind of wonder how sustainable is that. I think you look, a lot of advanced statistics guys say that that's not sustainable, and that eventually reverts to the mean to some degree. I mean, you control it to some degree, but Green Bay, they had 4 turnovers this game. That's more than they had punts. And you just can't do that and expect to win this game, especially when someone like Rivers, who, like you said, when Rivers plays well, this Colts team looks awesome, and that's why they looked awesome today. Yeah, absolutely. And when this team's running game is going, they're doing a really good job of starting to run the rock out of shotgun instead of just being an under center squad. They're doing a really good job with that. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. That offensive line is full of good football players too, Costanzo, and then of course Q. I mean, they're absolute grinders up front.
they're doing a good job of putting themselves in a position to win. And that defense, you talk about, picking up a guy like DeForest Buckner over the offseason, that was huge for them. Huge, and adding that to that defensive staff is really good. To be honest, I'm sitting here trying to think of who the Colts have at corner. I don't even know. Who are their corners right now?
They have Rocky Sin has been young, but you're right. I mean, they don't have Xavier Rhodes has actually sort of turned back the clock a little bit. He's had a good year with them. But you're right. I mean, it's a team of really no names to a lot of degree. Justin Houston has been having a good season with them, and he's been probably one of the most underrated players in football for quite some time. I think we all sort of assumed his career was over when he left Kansas City, and he's still producing with Indianapolis. He's playing really well. I also, though, there was one thing about Indianapolis that you do have to mention. They had 9 holding penalties on offense. That can't happen. You can't. No. And people were complaining about the refs calling them, but I mean, I didn't see all of them, but I saw a good amount of them, and they all looked like holds to me. Maybe there's some I missed, but I mean, you got to clean that up. Yeah, that's discipline more than anything. It's a combination of discipline and getting yourself in the right spot with your footwork, and that's something that they'll clean up. I don't have any doubt about that. But it's so funny because you have on the Green Bay side, you have 4 turnovers, and then with Indianapolis, you have 9 holding calls. It's like, which one would you want if you want to win a football game? Both of those suck. They'll clean it up. I think that, you just got to nip it in the bud right now and, make sure that your footwork's in the right spot. Don't be lazy with your feet. Keep those feet active, especially when you're running the football. And, it's stuff that you'll get better at as the season goes on. You got to remember it's a different year this year. I don't know what the Colts practice schedule is like. Maybe they weren't in pads as much this week. Who knows? But that's stuff you got to clean up in practice. Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. All right, let's move on. How about this? 2 teams contending for a playoff spot. The Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys will play the Washington football team on Thanksgiving. The winner will be 4-7 and lead the division. I mean, this is it's fantastic. Did you see the clip of Skip Bayless dancing on Twitter after this? I did not. I wasn't on Twitter a lot today. I can show it to you. I put this it was originally to Everybody Dance Now. I had to change the music because this video will get copyright claimed. But here it is. I have the Skip Bayless. Yes, I cut it out. That was 30 seconds long on his thing. It's just an absolutely absurd thing. I mean, let's just talk about I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to make the playoffs. I said this 2 weeks ago. As crazy as it is, I think this is going to happen. I think they will too. And you know what's interesting about the Cowboys is that today, having Andy Dalton in there helps a lot. Let's be honest. As opposed to I can't even remember the backup's name. Garrett Gilbert, Ben DiNucci. Oh, Garrett Gilbert. That's right. Gilbert played well for them actually. Yeah, he did. I liked him. Yeah. But I'm an big Orlando Apollos fan here. So I was a big fan of him in the AAF. Of course. No, but the one thing I noticed about the Cowboys today is that the couple, I didn't watch this entire game either. I'm going to be completely honest. They ran the football really well. And I saw a couple and especially against Minnesota, that's huge. Minnesota's a good, solid defense up front. They lost a lot in their secondary, but up front with that front 7, they're still just as mean as anybody. But they ran the football really well. Their inside zone, their duo, stuff like that was working today. And anybody who watches this, I know that it's duo and inside zone are different. I just put those two together. That's like a big thing in the offensive line community. It's not duo as an inside zone. I know. Okay. Just a little background there. But no, they ran the football well today. They put their backs in positions to make plays. And, it's the thing with football, man. You need athletes on the field. You got CeeDee Lamb. You got Amari Cooper, you got Tony Pollard, who's an underrated back, I think, and Zeke. You're going to have a chance to win football games, especially when you got a vet like Andy Dalton. I think that's going to help them a lot. But the Vikings are just a weird football team too. It's like those guys have some talent on offense, and is Dalvin Cook's not injured, right? I saw him go down for a brief moment, but I don't think that. I think he came back later, so I don't think that's a thing. I don't think I've heard about any injury. You're putting me on the spot here. I don't believe he got hurt. I can take a peek. Because I'm looking at the stats right now. Alexander Mattison had 1 rush, so probably not. Okay, definitely not then. Okay, I just saw him go down when I was watching. I was like, oh damn, that's Dalvin Cook. That's kind of a big deal for Minnesota, right? But clearly he came back. So no,
I agree with you. I'm not going to argue. I do think the Cowboys are going to win that division.
Yeah,
which is
they have a
crazy.
much easier schedule. Right. You talk about the running game. Elliott and Pollard averaged 6.3 yards per carry combined. They had 163 yards on just 26 carries. CD Lamb had one of the most awesome catches you will see all year. That was incredible. He's having a great rookie season.
Yeah.
Also, there was the all-time blue balls moment, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, on the last drive when it's fourth down. They don't complete it. And then they say, oh, and there's a flag down in the backfield. Turns out it wasn't a flag. It was a yellow shoe that fell off someone's foot. So all-time moment there. Also, fun fact about Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins averaged over 10 yards per attempt in this game. Okay. He's done that 5 times this season in 10 games. He's averaged over 10 yards per attempt. He's leading the league in yards per attempt. So all this talk about how Kirk Cousins hasn't played well, and it's true for the most part, but this isn't one of his better seasons. But still, despite this, he's had some games where he's been really good. A lot of that is the system. I mean, listen, having Dalvin Cook to fake a handoff to and then throw it to Adam Thielen or whoever down the field, Jefferson. It's a great system for him to be in, but it's still interesting and worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. You are right. It's not like he's back there going through 3 or 4 reads and then, ripping a backside dig as his last option. It's, that. And that's the thing is that you look at Stefanski and that coaching tree coming with Kubiak. They've done a really good job of building their play action game into their wide zone, really stretching the field downfield and working their receivers. They're number one in on what looks like a post. So you get that safety maybe leaking across the field and then stemming it back out to a corner. They love that stuff. And they have 2 guys who can go and get the football with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. And it's interesting. It's really interesting to see how Kirk Cousins has done this year. I mean, it's weird, man. Minnesota's a weird football team. But
they really are.
They're fun to watch sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said in the past, like as long as they can get the running game to work, this is going to be a good offense. If they can't get the running game to work, that's when sort of the ugly Kirk Cousins comes out when they sort of have to rely on him a bit more, and he might turn the ball over. For Minnesota, I mean, their stars showed up. Thielen had over 100 yards. Justin Jefferson had 86 yards. Dalvin Cook had over 100 yards. Eric Kendricks had one of the coolest interceptions you'll see all year. But I mean, at the end of the day, the reason my biggest problem with the Vikings coming into the season, which everyone's biggest problem, was their defensive back play. And it's been rough. Also, just want to mention quick in the chat, some people seem to be confused about no Kyle. Maybe they missed the beginning of the show. This is Hook Cam. Yeah, Kyle couldn't make it. We have Hook Cam. Hello to everyone who was late for this one. But yeah.
What's going on, everybody?
All right. Any final thoughts on this one?
No, I mean, it is what it is. It's going to be really funny to see the Cowboys at 5-7 or 4-7 leading the division. That'll be be fun.
Yes. Or the Washington football team. One of the two.
Or the Balls.
Yes. We'll see about the Balls later. Dolphins taking on the Broncos here. This was an upset. I mean, Tua got benched in this game. We saw a Fitztragic come back with an interception. What were your thoughts on this one?
It was really interesting. So I wanted to go back and it's tough to make a decision right now because I wanted to really see like why did Tua get benched? Was it because Flores was looking at the game like he's getting smoked right now. Our offensive line's not playing good. We want to preserve this guy. Let's take him out. We're probably not going to win this football game. It was a little too tight for me to think to accept that thought process. So I would imagine that he was missing things. I saw a couple of plays where it was just like all curls, right? Like everybody's running a curl and he's like not even looking to the right side. Like he's looking at dudes who are bracketed or, he's not ripping a ball to one-on-one coverage on the outside. It was a really, really strange game. I haven't watched a ton of Tua lately for anybody. I've been super busy with other stuff. I don't like to make excuses for that, but really interesting to see Tua get benched in this. Again, I think that he was missing stuff. I think that he was missing stuff downfield. There was a play down inside the red zone where it looked like they had a really nice post-corner combo that he just missed. He didn't see the corner. A lot of times when you're inside the red zone, teams are running cover 2, and that corner ball is going to be the one that you're looking for to score a touchdown. He just wasn't even looking at the right side. I think that today was kind of a step back for Tua. I saw somebody in the A-Man report saying it was the altitude. Entirely possible. people do not play well in Mile High Stadium, and it's because it's really, really high up and there's no air. So again, you don't want to make excuses, and you would like to see your rookie Q, who you've invested a lot in, make better plays than what he did. Like I said, I think he was missing stuff. It's tough for me to make a true assumption without seeing coach's film, though. I do want to say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always tough with these things. But I mean, I've studied Tua's film a little bit closer since he's entered the league, and I do think a lot of what he was able to have success with is off of play action. And Miami only had 56 rushing yards today. They were not really effective through the running game. I think that probably hurt them. Also, I think the Denver defense is underrated. I think the Denver defense is good.
Yes.
It's weird because I always feel like after I watch a game, I'm like, Denver, they played well defensively, but then I look at the score and they lost 37-30, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe not. But I mean, just one stat that just jumps out at you in this game: Denver averaged 7.3 yards per play. Miami averaged 3.7 yards per play. I mean, that's just a huge thing. Despite this, it was still a one-score game. Melvin Gordon had a Jerome Bettis-esque fumble where he fumbled at the goal line when they were up a touchdown, and that gave Miami some life. Then we saw the Fitzpatrick thing. But yeah, I mean, this Denver team continues to be baffling, and I don't know what to make of Denver. I don't know what to make of Drew Lock. I keep feeling like I've made a decision on Lock, and then he does the exact opposite the next week, where I say Lock is good, and then he'll throw 4 picks. And then I'll say, okay, Lock sucks, and then he'll have a solid game. Yeah. He wasn't incredible in this game, but he was solid, and also had one of the all-time stat padding moments where when you're throwing only 4 seconds left, just trying to kill the clock, and he throws it, and instead of throwing it out of bounds, he throws it up to Tim Patrick, who was open to gain 50 yards at the end of the play.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Classic. He probably drafted himself on his fantasy team. That's
exactly.
No, it's so funny. I have yet to meet a person who's like, Drew Lock's a stud or Drew Lock sucks. I feel like the consensus with a lot of people on Drew Lock is I don't know. Sometimes he plays good. Sometimes he plays bad. It's really, really interesting to see Drew Lock go up and down. And I was talking to, again, one of my friends who I coach with is a big Broncos fan. And he was like, I wasn't a huge fan of their offensive coordinator last year, but Drew Lock looked comfortable with him. And I liked where that team was headed, even though I wasn't a huge fan of that OC. And this is, again, his words, not mine. He said that he really feels like Drew Lock isn't as comfortable with this OC, which is why we've had a little bit of ups and downs, which is entirely possible. Quarterbacks mesh with certain offensive coordinators. Not everybody's buddy in the league. Not everybody's ideologies matches up. So it's really interesting to see, Drew Lock have this up and down, but it's the same thing. I completely agree. It's, they have good weapons, right? They have Jerry Jeudy Kirkpatrick. No, it's not. I wanted to say Fitzpatrick, and it's not Fitzpatrick. Isn't it just Tim Patrick?
Tim Patrick. That's Tim Patrick. Yeah, Tim Patrick. Yeah,
nothing before the Patrick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have Noah Fant as well, KJ Hamler. Cortland Sutton's been hurt all year, but yeah, they have plenty of weapons.
But that's what's weird is that they have weapons. Like, this team should be putting up points,
but they can't block. That's the problem.
Their
offense is terrible, and especially with blitzes. I mean, some of that's on Lock too. He doesn't help his guys out with that. But yeah, I mean, they can't pick that thing up. And I think I made this comparison when I made a video about Lock a few weeks ago. He reminds me of Ryan Tannehill back when he was in Miami, where I feel like his physical tools are there, but it's sort of the mental game that's really been the problem. And if you almost got to simplify the offense for him to really have him have success.
Couldn't agree more. That's actually a really good comparison. He's very much so like that. And I agree. And, tying that into what I said earlier, it's like one of the most tragic things you can do to young quarterbacks is run them through a revolving door of offensive coordinators. That's just so hard for these guys to do. And I think this is his second year in the league. And so with his second offensive coordinator, there's going to be lapses 100%. So you have to find some consistency. You need to find the identity of who you are as a team, whether it's, we're going to pound the football with Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, and we're going to set up Drew Lock on some play action stuff, really try and stretch the field with Jerry Jeudy. If that's what it is, and that's what it is, and you got to attack that and be good at it. But it just seems like there's inconsistencies with it, where it's like you'll have a couple of drives where they're, out of the gun and they're slinging the rock 4, 5, 6 times a drive. And then you have some times where they're driving the football and, okay, we got to pound the rock. But again, it does come back to their offensive line. I wasn't a huge fan of their Garrett Bowles pick back in the day. I think Dalton Reisner was a step in the right direction. I think Lloyd Cushenberry's a step in the right direction, but you need to have that thing dialed in, especially if your quarterback's not going to be able to read and pick up pressure.
Yeah, and probably should mention Jawan James opting out, their starting right tackle. That hurts them as well.
Very true.
All right, let's move on now. Let's talk about this one. Another weird weather game. I've never been to Cleveland. Maybe this is just what Cleveland is like. I don't know, but we've seen a lot of weird weather in this. I mean, I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts on this because what in the world is going on with Carson Wentz? I mean, this is another just ugly game from him, and he's someone who was an MVP candidate not too long ago, and now. There's plenty of Eagles fans who are saying they should get rid of him. What's going on?
Yeah, they're all over the map, and their lack of receiving threat is a problem at this point. Yes, they have Dallas Goedert. Yes, they have Alshon Jeffrey, but outside of that, you got Travis Fulgham out there, who's one of your top guys. Like it's tough to go and win games in the NFL with dudes like that on the outsides. It's a lot. In a way, it's kind of like New England, where it's like, okay, you have to pedigree matters in the NFL, right? Where you went to college, where you played, who you were practicing against, that matters when you get to the NFL. And when you have dudes like Travis Fulgham, or you have Greg Ward, or people like that, where it's like, okay, we have quarterbacks who are now playing receiver. We have dudes who are athletic, sure, but they haven't been going up against Division I or NFL caliber cornerbacks every single day in practice. We're not going to create separation on the outsides. Outside of that, I do think that Philadelphia's offensive line took a step back, and I think that that's had a pretty drastic impact on Carson Wentz. You see him facing a ton of pressure now, and as mobile as he is, he's got to be able to pick stuff up upstairs, and by that I mean he's got to be able to see pressure and get rid of that ball quick. And I think that, like Olivier Vernon, I think had 3 or 4 sacks today.
Yeah, he had 3 sacks. Mm-hmm.
That can't happen,
right.
and like your all pro, all world right tackle is getting beat. Like, I don't know what's up with Lane Johnson. He's, one of the best tackles in the league, and he's not playing like it this year. So it's that I think is a massive thing for Carson Wentz. So I think you fix the Wentz problem. If you fix it, obviously, with a lot of quarterbacks, right? I'm not saying anything that's, breaking news, but it's like, if you fix your receiving problem and you get some dudes who create separation and you fix your offensive line, I think Carson Wentz is going to have much more success.
Yeah, all the Eagles need is an entire receiving core, an entire offensive line.
Yeah, and then Carson Wentz will be good.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, and in fairness, they have had injuries on the line, so that's a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. No Myles Garrett in this game, and they still give up 5 sacks. That can't happen. And Wentz, there are excuses to make for Wentz, but at the end of the day, you do have to talk about he leads the league in interceptions, he leads the league in fumbles, and he leads the league in dropped interceptions. So he's been lucky to only throw a league-leading 13 interceptions. I mean, this is just it. There are excuses, but at the same time, this has also been not a great season for him.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just looking at some of the comments in the chat, but one of them is, I think the question is how long Philly rides this Super Bowl victory before they realize that their team is bad. I agree with you. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Philadelphia, but they had a really, really good run, and it was built off of a fierce defensive line with Chris Long, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, or Barrett or Barnett. I think it's Barnett. And they lived off of that. And it's like, even with that Super Bowl run, I was talking to my friend about this the other day. If Carson Wentz is in on that Super Bowl run in those playoffs, I don't know if they go to the Super Bowl. Like, I'm not sold on Carson Wentz being this stud who is worth that second round or second overall draft pick. So it's interesting. And I think that with Carson Wentz, it does all tie together where it's like, okay, offensive line isn't great. That pressure breaks down, or that offensive line protection breaks down. Now he's stepping up in the pocket, trying to improvise. And I don't necessarily think that he's the best at that. I think that when he does that, that's when he gets himself into trouble. He starts trying to force balls, and that's where we end up with interceptions. Yeah.
It's interesting. I like what you bring up at that last part, because I feel like when Wentz did have his MVP caliber season, part of what it was I remember he had it was a Thursday night game against Carolina where like it looked like he was down. All of a sudden he comes out of the pocket and runs for like 20 yards. The announcers love that. The fans love that. 9 out of 10 times those plays end in negative plays, and you want to avoid those plays. And it's the kind of like I got on Deshaun Watson for the same reason sometimes, although I think he's better at it than Wentz is. It's like you want to just avoid those plays in general. And I mean, the guy holds on to the ball for way too long. The safety, that should never have happened. He had plenty of time in the pocket.
Oh, yeah.
It can't happen.
Bad safety to take. And that to me, I think, is the biggest thing. And it's like, that improviser quality is really good in some guys. You look at, Deshaun's a great example. Patrick Mahomes is a great example. Lamar is another great example. Like those guys improvising is a lot of times really good for you. But sometimes with guys like Carson Wentz, the improviser trait and that quality, maybe they flip that switch too early in a play. Maybe they're trying to bail too early. Stuff like that can't happen. And sometimes you just got to eat it down. Honestly, that's what, you look at the longevity of a guy like Peyton or a guy like Brady. Part of the reason why they're around so long is because they're not trying to run around because they know they can't, first off, but they're also willing to be like, all right, 1st and 10, nothing's open. I'm not going to sit here and scramble in the pocket. Let's get rid of this football. Let's live to fight another down. And I think that maybe that needs to happen for Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've always brought up is like Brady throws the ball away on 3rd and 10. Brady throws the ball away on 3rd down. If nothing's open, he gets rid of the football. Yeah. Let's talk about Cleveland for a second, though, because Cleveland is, I bashed them a little bit earlier in the show, but I mean, this team is awesome. I think really the thing is, I've never been a big Baker Mayfield fan. I like him as a guy. I don't love what I see on tape. But I mean, today he was fine. He wasn't great. He did have that one bad overthrow, but he was fine. But this running game is just awesome. I still think Nick Chubb is the best running back in football. And then you have Kareem Hunt, who's debatably like a top 10, maybe even top 5 running back in football. It's incredible. I mean, they're a good team, and they're second in the division right now.
Yeah, so I think too the biggest things for Cleveland in the offseason was, hiring Stefanski and then bringing in Callahan. And Callahan, for those of you who don't know, is just an absolute legend in the NFL. And he's one of the best offensive line coaches of all time. Bringing him in helped change this football team, and in turn helps Baker Mayfield be better, because you don't put the entire, it's not like, hey, Baker, we're going to need you to throw the ball 50 times for us to win this. No, they can depend on 2 great backs like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and they can pull their guard and center, and they can do, great things with their wide zone and their power. Like they do a really good job of mixing all that stuff up, taking that pressure off Baker Mayfield, putting it on those 2 studs and letting them go to work. They're learning how to run the football and be a really good football team in that sense. And that in turn is going to help Baker Mayfield in the long run, I think.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Let's move on now. Let's talk about this one. Taysom Hill, the starter. This was fun. I think that I personally was convinced Jameis was going to end up being the starter. But Hill comes in. And, he was good. He threw the ball well. He threw the ball a good amount in this one and was effective at it. He almost threw an interception. He also fumbled twice, but New Orleans covered both of those. So you got to clean that up. But I mean, at the end of the day, this New Orleans Saints defense was just awesome and completely shut down Atlanta.
Yeah, if there's any game Drew Brees can not play in, against the Falcons is probably one of the ones that you're okay with. No shade to the Falcons, they just they have some building to do. With Taysom Hill, because I knew we were going to end up talking about him. It took him a little bit to get going, and as expected, right? You're not going to expect him to come in and just start dropping dimes, but it took him a little bit. The first half, really, I felt like he needed to grease up the wheels, put some oil in there, and then get rolling. He left his guys out to dry a couple of times with his throws, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that he did what you needed him to do and win in this football game. I had a couple of notes on it, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but for the most part, like I said, he needed to get stuff going. He missed a mesh on a play action early in the game, and he almost threw that pick on the goal line. Stuff like that you got to see, but he got way more comfortable as you get rolling. And I think that if he does have to start for a certain period of time, you can look to see him improve earlier and earlier in games and putting together more of a complete game as a true starter in the NFL. I don't know if he's necessarily making the case for teams after this game, hey, you need to sign me, although I think he just signed an extension with New Orleans, but I don't know if he's necessarily making the case that like, hey, I'm going to be your starter for the future. I don't think that's, on the table quite yet.
Well, if one team's going to do it, it would probably be the Saints, because no one find someone who loves you as much as Sean Payton loves Taysom Hill. I mean, there is definitely something to that. But, listen, Hill was good. And again, I want to talk about the Saints defense, because this is the Saints team that I predicted to go to the Super Bowl preseason. They're so complete on offense and defense. When they're playing well, there is no fault in this team. And I thought one of the big pieces was Quan Alexander, who they just acquired from a trade, who, he was a Pro Bowler with Tampa Bay. I'm definitely not happy he's on the Saints now, but I mean, he really seems like he might be the missing piece to that puzzle. And this looked like one of the best defenses in the league, already paired with a top 5 offense in this league. So I mean, at least statistically. So this has been a good. This is a really good win for New Orleans.
Couldn't agree more. I'm really glad you brought up Quan Alexander, because that was one of those sneaky moves at the deadline that I was like, why is San Francisco shipping this dude off? Quan Alexander is one of the most athletic linebackers in the league. He covers well. He's an absolute dog in the box. Like, he knows how to fill a gap in the running game. Like, I was really surprised that San Francisco was willing to let him go. And then he goes to a team like New Orleans where they got, Demario Davis. Now you put Quan Alexander, and now you're really starting to put together a team that can make a run with that defense. And Malcolm Jenkins, I think, is going to be one of the bigger pieces. In all honesty, I haven't watched a ton of Saints football. I did see, I can't remember who they played. Malcolm Jenkins was just getting torched. I want to say it was the Raiders, actually, where Malcolm Jenkins.
It might have been.
He was having a
slow start.
He
was
having it, but he's turned it around, and that's huge for New Orleans right now. And I'm really happy you brought up this defense, because it's 100% true. If they can get this defense going, and you've got a vet like Drew Brees in there who can facilitate and manage a football game and keep that defense fresh when they do get on the field, that's going to be big. And their pass rush is looking good. I know that their defensive Henderson, I know his last name's Henderson. I always want to say Devery Henderson, who I think was a receiver way back. But I know that's not his first name, but like, their pass rush is solid. I mean, they got Malcolm Brown, who's an ex-New England Patriot. He does a great job stuffing the run, playing, a true nose tackle or a one tech. And Cameron Jordan, who's a salty vet, he's always going to be able to put pressure on the queue. Like, they got something cooking in New Orleans, and bringing in Quan Alexander and seeing him today, I think, puts them as just as much of a contender in the NFC as anybody.
Yeah, I think they're the best team in the NFC. But I mean, we saw what they did to my team, Tampa Bay, a couple weeks ago. I mean, this is a really complete team. And yeah, it's Trey Hendrickson. I thought it was Trey, but I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure. Okay. He had 2 sacks in this game. David Amanada had 2 sacks in this game, and Cam Jordan had 3 sacks in this game. You also had a Demario Davis sack. I mean, this was a. I mean, again, it was an awesome performance, and they didn't even have Marshawn Lattimore in this one. I mean, this team is insane, and they're currently the 1 seed in the NFC, and it's hard to imagine a team finding a way to beat them. Maybe if they play Seattle and Russell Wilson goes off or something, but this is a loaded team. And Green Bay beat them earlier this year, but yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, this team with the defense is scary. We did talk about Green Bay with Indy. The thing with Green Bay, and if we do touch on the playoffs just a little bit, the thing with Green Bay that if I'm a Packers fan, what worries me is the fact that they just don't have the receiver depth to go and make a run in my eyes. And if you have a team like New Orleans who is really able to apply pressure on Rodgers, and you have a coverage guy like Quan Alexander now in the middle of the field who can really range inside the hash and really wherever you need him to be, that's going to be a huge problem. And like I said before, this is a very legit football team, especially when that defense is playing at full go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and for Green Bay, if only they had a first-round pick at one of the biggest wide receiver drafts of all time, they could have used on something to help them this year.
Yeah, I
don't know what they did.
I could talk about that for 15 minutes. Like, I still T. Higgins is on the board. Like, yeah, take him. He's there.
Exactly.
No, we'll take the Utah State kid. What are you talking about? What are we doing?
I know. It's ridiculous. That's one of the things that drives me crazy is teams that go so far into preparing for the future when you have a team that can win now, worry about next year. Drives me crazy. All right, let's move on. This game drove a lot of Lions fans crazy. I mean, this was ugly. I mean, you have the Carolina Panthers. They're starting a quarterback who we've most recently seen play in the XFL. They're missing Christian McCaffrey, one of the best players in football. They're missing 2 offensive linemen. They're missing multiple starters on defense, and they get completely shut out 20-0. I looked on the Lions Reddit after this game. The top comment on the post-game thread was, I watched the Lions go 0-16, and that might be the worst football game I've ever watched. I mean, this was brutal.
Yeah, it was just tough to watch. Excuse me. Just absolute. Like, I kept flipping back and forth to this game between New England and this game, and I was like, Lions are going to put together something. Like they're too good on offense to not put together. Like I'm like, what is going? And second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter with 14 minutes. I'm like, what is happening? I finally watched it. The first snap I watched earlier in the game, there was a fumbled snap, and I was like, oh, that's never a good sign. If you fumble a snap out of the gut, like especially in the league, it's gonna be a long game. Just so bad, and I feel so bad for all these Lions fans. Just great quality people, and obviously some of the guys that we do some content with, and you feel bad for them, but it's like, in a way, you hope that this is kind of the turning point for them to kind of pass on Patricia and start moving on to new things, which is probably the last thing those guys want to hear. But like we said, man, this offense is too good. This offense is too good. Matt Stafford is too good to put up a goose egg. They're too good. Okay, there's no Kenny Golladay, there's no DeAndre Swift. I get that. But you should still be able to run the rock with Adrian Peterson. You should still be able to run the rock with Kerryon Johnson. You should still be able to push the ball downfield with Marvin Jones and with TJ Hawkinson and with Jamal Agnew and with Marvin Hall, Quintez Cephas. Like, you should be able to still get something on offense, and they just couldn't do it all day. It looked to me like they were just continuously shooting themselves in the foot. Their defense, in all actuality, like, they didn't play horrible. Who knows what this game looks like if they have Teddy and Christian McCaffrey in it, though. This is going to be completely worse. Sorry, there's a really loud car going on.
It's okay. Just I see tough. Super chat. Kenneth Lee says Lions fans are having Chase McDaniels flashbacks. I'm look. Does he mean Chase Daniel? That's what I was
probably.
Chase
Daniels.
Right. I Googled it. I was like, is there someone I'm missing? And it said, do you mean Chase Daniel? So maybe that's it. But I mean, this was just ugly. I mean, the Detroit Lions, bad. There's no Tampa Bay last week, which I'm not saying you have to be Tampa Bay, but last week, Tampa Bay, they fumbled on the first drive and then scored on every other drive throughout that game. This week, not only did Detroit not score, they averaged 3.4 yards per play. I mean, again, it's just brutal. And we both done content with Luke G. I mean, this was I feel bad for him. Heart goes out to him for
all those DSA guys.
And Lions fans, one of the best fans in football. I mean, those guys love their team. They need to get rid of Patricia. We all know that. On the flip side, Brian Burns was awesome in this game. He had multiple sacks. That guy's, he got kind of overshadowed last year because of all the awesome edge rushers that came out with Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, Max Crosby. Yeah. But I mean, he's another one of those guys. And PJ Walker, let's talk about him. He was fun.
Dude, he looked good today. I mean, he had two bad picks. Yes, we need to get that off the table first. Yes, he did make those bad plays. But I actually just made a little video on this. But I loved the way that Joe Brady incorporated PJ Walker so nicely into that offense and really took pressure off of his shoulders. And I know probably what people are thinking is he's a backup and he's been in the building. Shouldn't he know what's going on? Absolutely. But when the live bullets start flying and you're in an actual football game, things can be a little bit different. But the way that they were able to work in their mesh, all of their bunch stuff, have their pick routes, all their rub routes, everything just looked so good. And tip of the cap to DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, because those guys played outstanding today. And I can tell you, obviously, if they don't have a great game, PJ Walker probably isn't having as good of a game, but DJ Moore did a really good job on all their mesh and stuff like that. And maybe people don't know, and I'll kind of go in a little bit on this. In mesh, if a defense is running zone or man, if they're running zone, receivers got to shut their route down once they cross each other and get to the hashes. If your ball's in the middle of the field, if it's man, they keep running and break upfield once they get outside the hashes. They were just on the money with all of their routes today. Everything they were reading right. And again, no offense to Detroit, they're not exactly the pillar of what a great NFL defense looks like. But
how dare you, sir?
Yeah, how dare you? Podcast over. I can't work with this man anymore. But no, the receivers, they did a really good job with everything they did today, and PJ Walker made the throws he needed to win a football game. So it was cool to see a little bit of legitimacy for the XFL. You got to think the XFL was sitting there like, oh yeah, PJ Walker's balling right now. That's big for us. So
these leagues, right? Garrett Gilbert looks solid. PJ Walker. Yeah, you got two guys here.
We might have ourselves a little rivalry. But yeah, PJ Walker played well. It was really cool to see. Like we said at the beginning of this, two bad picks, absolutely. But for the most part, I thought that he looked really good for a dude stepping into his first NFL start.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about why is everyone calling him like every time you Google him, it's Philip Walker now? Why is Google
Okay.
convinced it's Philip?
Thank you. All right. I Googled
Yeah.
him like 6 times today and I was like, why are we calling him
Right?
Philip all of a sudden?
Yeah. I don't know
NFL
what's
is
going on.
Philip, XFL is PJ. That must be
Exactly. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. It's a brand change for him. All right. Let's move on. Let's talk about Mike Tomlin said going into this game or after this game wasn't perfect, but nothing about us is perfect except for our record. Pittsburgh stays undefeated. Obviously we all expected this to happen. I couldn't believe the line was only 10, which says something about it. Because the Pittsburgh just way better. We finally saw some James Conner playing well, which is nice to see. Deontay Johnson had an incredible catch in this one. And the biggest complaint I saw, again, I like to look at the Reddits after these games. The biggest complaint Pittsburgh fans seemed to have was that their long snapper had problems. So things are going pretty well for them.
That's a really good problem to have. If your biggest thing was that like we had a couple of low snaps on punt, let's clean it up, or not even on punt because we don't punt, but on our PATs, and that's probably a good problem to have. Pittsburgh is a very complete football team, and it's weird because there's a couple of, and I keep referring to some of my friends. A couple of my friends are like not sold on Pittsburgh. I would imagine it's a strength of schedule. As a Patriots fan, there was a lot of strength of schedule talk going on when Brady was at the helm. Nothing Steelers can do about their schedule. It gets dealt to them at the beginning of the year, like it does every other NFL team. If they lose games, they're going to get some negativity. If they win games, people are going to be like, "Well, the schedule's not strong enough." Bottom line is that they're winning football games. It's tough to compete against the Steelers team, especially when you have James Conner going, because they're going to beat you on the outsides with Juju and Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and Eric Ebron. Right, Eric Ebron's a really good receiving threat underneath as a Y or H, and James Conner getting going helps this team so much. And I think that was kind of the biggest thing from, if you are a Steelers fan, is the fact that you're like, hey, James Conner looked good today, which is the first time I think they've seen that in a little bit. I think he had a couple other good games this year, though. I probably shouldn't say that. But, Big Ben playing well and taking advantage of the one-on-one matchups on the outside is probably the thing that's got to be so scary for defenses to play. I mean, it's got to be so tough to sit there and try and cover Juju, who's this big, strong specimen. It's going to be tough. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, big Ben Roethlisberger has been such a joy to watch this season, where last we saw him, he was leading the league in passing yards and interceptions. He was full gunslinger. And with the exception of at the end of the first half, which Eli Mullen points out here, for the most, he's been sort of this game manager type, and he chooses when to take these shots a lot more carefully now. And I think I said in the previous podcast, it's a worrying thing for the rest of the NFL if Ben Roethlisberger is now choosing when to take his shots carefully. Yeah. Also, we have a super chat. Kenneth Lee says Jacksonville Jaguars, more like Justinville Jaguars. All right. Thank you, Kenneth Lee.
Thanks, Kenneth.
Yeah. All right.
What's Justinville? I'm missing something there. Justin
I'm
Fields?
not sure. Maybe. I don't know. I was just going to move on because I didn't get it.
All right, let's move on.
And then Kenneth, you completely stopped the show.
Sorry, guys.
Terrible work. Kyle would have never done this, Cam.
It's my last time on here. All right, guys, we're going out with a bang.
All right. Yeah, for Jacksonville, at least, Jake Luton had a tough go at this Steelers defense, ended up with 151 yards with 37 attempts. Also, okay, here we see Kenneth Lee, Justin Fields. There we go. Thanks for putting us, our slow brains, you put it together for us. Yeah. Listen, you at least know either Minshew's the guy or you draft someone. And James Robinson is good. You got a halfback out of this, so I guess you got that.
Yeah, it's a long go for Jacksonville. The one thing that I think they should be positive about is the fact that they do have a pretty solid receiving core, which I think kind of flies under the radar. Chris Conley, Keelan Cole, and DJ Chark, I think, are three really solid receiving weapons for them. Again, you got to retool your offensive line and find ways to get them into a workable form. And you got to find a quarterback. I'm a huge Gardner fan. I don't know what's up with him. I hope that he's okay because like I said, I'm a massive Gardner fan. But you got to wonder, he's not getting games in. He's not proven to you that he's the franchise guy if they go somewhere else. But a lot of work to go for Jacksonville. And then, of course, they blew up that defense last year. Besides Josh Allen, really, what else are they working with? It's going to be a long go for Jacksonville. You got to start rebuilding.
Yeah, and they made some weird moves too. Like I remember they got rid of Ronnie Harrison, who's been he was a solid starter for young safety for them, and they got rid of him for a 5th round pick. Like they made some just odd moves. They
Yeah.
really did not want to be good this year, I think is what it comes down to.
Yeah. At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about Gardner Minshew, maybe he'll be back next week. And I said the same thing about Locke. Is like, everyone wants to make this decision now. You don't have to make it now. We still have 6 weeks left. You can make it then. You get some time before you have to make this decision.
100%.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk some balls. The Washington football team gets a victory, but the biggest story was the Joe Burrow injury after this. I mean, just brutal, tough to see. He's one of the more electric young players, and it sucks that really the only reason worth watching Cincinnati is now out for the season.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I been a big Joe Burrow fan since he kind of came onto the scene with LSU, followed his career pretty closely throughout the last 2 years at LSU. And then, seeing him go to Cincinnati was really, really cool to see him have success and, kind of doing it with some new guys, with Tyler Boyd, who's obviously been there, but with T. Higgins and, continuing to do well. And really the way that offense really changed to him, going with a lot more empty, running the football with him more, a lot of their, RPO stuff where they're running what they call a bang 8, which is a receiver running 8 yards upfield and then breaking it off to a post. They molded everything to him, and he was having a lot of success with that, and it was really fun to watch. And I think this is a winnable football game for the Bengals if he is in. I think he ended up getting hurt in the 3rd quarter, and I don't think that it was 20-9 quite yet. But it's like you said, the reason to watch the Bengals unfortunately had an ACL tear today. So it's I wish him this the best recovery. I hope that he gets better soon, because he's going to be a baller in the league for years to come.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe Cincinnati led in this game when Burrow got hurt.
Okay.
And then Ryan Finley, not a great performance in relief duty with 3 for 10 for 30 yards with a pick. That did not go too well. I mean, we should talk about Washington for a second. The balls, again, if they win on Thursday, they lead the division. They had more rushing yards than passing yards. This was just it was an ugly game. If you're wanting to watch this game on Game Pass, you could probably skip it. It's fine. There was talking about points per drive. There was 1.2 points per drive total on this one. So this was a mess. Alex Smith is kind of been a weird Alex Smith that we've seen. I've sort of joked about in previous podcasts. We've almost seen like gunslinger Alex Smith, but then which is fun, right? I mean, it was a legitimate thing that people were saying about Smith, like. Smith doing a good job getting the ball down the field, but needs to cut out the turnovers. I'm like, when have we heard this about Alex Smith before?
Yeah, right. Like this wasn't the Alex Smith we heard about in Kansas City, where he threw touchdowns to 0 receivers. No, it's super interesting though. Like you love to see Alex Smith come back and have success, and seeing him get wins. Like it's a really, really cool story. I think not the bigger story, but another storyline for the balls in this game was Chase Young. I really felt like this, not his true breakout game just yet, but this was a game where you're like, every snap, you got to keep an eye on where 99 is, because he's going to make you pay if you don't. He had that really cool, I want to say he had a forced fumble on the goal line. That was awesome. He has some moments in this game specifically where he took over, and he was playing really well against Jonah Williams, who was a 1st-round pick last year. So it was cool to see him play well and start to, maybe this Washington football team is starting to have an identity. So it really interesting. But yeah, it's like more rush yards and pass yards, and it's like Antonio Gibson is their starter. So it's like, ooh, what's happening with this football team? Terry McLaurin had a couple of cool plays, I will say that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, Chase Young is awesome. I mean, he's going to be a superstar. Eli Mullen says in the chat, we keep talking about offensive rookie of the year. Who is defensive rookie of the year? It might be Chase Young. I know Antoine Winfield for Tampa Bay has gotten some buzz as well. There's no real standouts, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I feel like every time there's no real standouts, it just goes to like who got drafted earlier. So Chase Young's probably the front runner.
Probably. Yeah, I would imagine so. If he puts, 2 or 3 more games together like he had today, then I think that's pretty much a slam dunk. Yeah.
All right, let's move on now. Let's talk Jets Chargers. Do we have to? Yes, we do. Yes, Jets Chargers here. I thought this was a time. I thought the Jets could have potentially gotten their win here. I mean, this was an opportunity. This is one you circle on the schedule. Hey, the Chargers lose these kind of games. Mims looked solid. Becton looked solid. But this was, again, another loss for the New York Jets. And they have now been eliminated from playoff contention with 6 weeks left in the season. Just goes to show the season they've had.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I didn't get to watch a ton of this one. I saw a couple of highlights. I thought Herbert looked decent. And I know that, being in Southern California, there's been a lot of buzz about him, and seeing him play well on a struggling football team has been encouraging. So I'm sure getting a win under his belt was really, really positive. I know that I want to say Keenan Allen had a pretty sick touchdown catch, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong, but a much needed win for the LA Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, Chargers fans obviously have been loving Herbert for good reason. I mean, a lot of people said that he wasn't going to be a great starter when they drafted him, myself included. And I still don't think he's been awesome. I mean, he has. He still isn't perfect, but I think all his problems are like rookie problems.
Yeah,
he's been awesome. For Joe Flacco, I do think it's a bit concerning for New York that Joe Flacco has outperformed Sam Darnold in this point. At the same time, I mean, Flacco, I think he's clearly shown that he's a good backup, if nothing else. But, this might be it for Darnold.
Yeah, which is really weird to say. And Sam Darnold makes some plays. Like, I've seen a couple of plays just, scrolling through Twitter, and you see these clips of Sam Darnold where he breaks to his left and he resets his feet and then rips a ball 20 yards downfield and it's in the bucket. And then you're like, dude, this guy's got an insane amount of talent. And it's just weird, man. New York is one of those strange places where honestly, if you don't have success in the first couple of years, you don't rarely see that revitalized career where they, continue to give you a shot. Becton has by far and away been the bright spot for this football team. So I agree. Sam Darnold, this could be it for him, which is really strange and really interesting to think about where he goes from here. I mean, he's got a ton of talent, when you got to think that coaching staff that he's had in New York hasn't been the best. Adam Gates isn't exactly a mastermind, behind the mic. So it's interesting to see where they go. I like Sam Darnold. He was one of my favorites when I was watching him play in college. That Rose Bowl he had against Penn State was phenomenal. So ever since then, I've been like, I think this kid's going to be really good. And it's really sucked to see him, I don't want to say waste away the first couple of years of his career, because he's going to learn a lot from it. But I don't think that he stays in New York from here on out. I don't think he wants to stay in New York from here on out, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's another good point. I mean, and especially, the Jets are almost definitely going to get the number 1 overall pick with Trevor Lawrence, probably the biggest quarterback prospect since Luck coming out of the draft. So, I mean, I kind of get it. And the reality of the NFL is, with these young guys, you don't get 4 years to prepare nowadays. You have to get ready in a hurry.
Yeah.
I mean, the Cardinals got rid of Josh Rosen after 1 year, and that was the right decision. I mean, you have to sometimes just say, let's just move on and let's not fall in love with potential. Let's just get another guy who has more potential right now than Darnold does.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And like I said earlier, the NFL is such a what have you done for me lately league. And you're 100% right. I was bummed out for Josh Rosen when that happened. I was like, damn, I wish my guy got a fair shake. But in all honesty, it was the right move to make. I mean, there's no way you go and talk to Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray right now and sit down with those two guys in a room and be like, well, we should have kept Josh Rosen. No, if something's, you know what I mean? If something's not working, especially in the league, cut bait, move on, try and build, try it again.
Yeah, exactly. It's the whole I forgot the term. It's like when you I don't know. I forgot the term, but yeah, it's the whole thing of don't look at what you spent on a guy. Just sort of cut bait and move on, like you said.
Yeah.
There's a fallacy, it's something fallacy. I forget what it is. Someone probably knows. Will tell me in the comments after the podcast is over. But all right. So any final thoughts on this fun week here? Fun week 11.
Yeah, super cool week. Thinking about that Raiders Chiefs game, the Raiders got some things to be excited about. What's their schedule like from here on out?
It's easy. I remember. I'll look it up real quick. But I remember they play. Well, here I have it. So they play the 2 tough games are to play Indianapolis and Miami. But those aren't impossible games. I wouldn't be shocked if they split those. And then you have Atlanta, the Jets, the Chargers, and the Broncos. So they could easily go 5-1 down the stretch.
Yeah, they really could be. And then they're rolling into playoffs with a lot of momentum. just about staying healthy at that point. They got, like we said, man, there's a lot to be excited about, not next year for this Raiders team, but for this year. I think that they're going to be pretty hot down the stretch.
Yes. Also, someone said sunk cost fallacy. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Sunk
yes.
cost
Appreciate.
fallacy.
Yes. That's for the, don't look at what you spent on someone or something. Just move on and get the next thing. Yeah.
I like
All right.
that.
Yeah. So that's our show. Before we get off here, Cam, let them know where they can find you on YouTube and everything else.
Yeah, so I've been on a little hiatus. For those of you who don't know, I'm currently in law school right now, about to take my midterm, so I haven't put out a ton of content. As things are kind of starting to wind down, I'm trying to get back at that. My channel is it's just the Hook Cam. I do film breakdowns like Jackson does here, and like open to anybody who's got some people that I should do a breakdown on. Go ahead and drop them in the comments of my videos. I love to be interactive with people who watch my stuff and talk football. Man, nothing like it in the world.
Yeah, I hate when people request. Don't request on mine. Request on his.
Oh, okay. Don't request on Jackson's, just mine.
Yeah, no, drives me crazy. I already know what I want to do. Don't tell me.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's really funny. All
yeah,
right, just mine then. Don't just talk. Don't troll Jackson either.
Yeah, oh, they will. I should never have said that. All right. Thanks to everyone for staying with us live and everyone watching after the fact. We really appreciate it. For all the Where's Kyle people in the chat, he will be back Wednesday with our Pick'em show. Yes, Bong Dong Silver says it's just law school, man. You should have plenty of spare time. Yeah,
he commented on my community post earlier. BD Silver, you're the man. Appreciate the love.
Yes, we're big fans of Bong Dong Silver here as well. All right. Until next time, everyone, have a good one.